Hello and welcome to Penmanship, a podcast about Australian writing culture. I'm your host, Andrew McMillen. Episode 17. This will be the last for 2015 and will conclude my first year of podcasting. I've really enjoyed starting this show and publishing these fortnightly episodes, and I hope it's been a great experience for you. I'd love to hear your feedback on who you think I should interview on this show in 2016. As you know, the focus of Penmanship is on people who work with words for a living, and so far this year I've interviewed journalists, authors, editors, critics, and songwriters about that tricky task of building a career from words. So if there's an Australian writer of any stripe who you'd like to hear featured on this podcast next year, please get in touch and let me know. Andrew@penmanshippodcast.com is the email. My final guest for 2015 is Jenny Valentish. In 2014, she published her first novel, Cherry Bomb, a teenage psychodrama set in the music industry. She's currently working on a book of immersive journalism about addiction, to be published in 2017. Before writing books, though, she was better known as an accomplished magazine editor, having moved to Australia from England in the mid-2000s and worked on titles such as Time Out Melbourne and JMag magazine. The latter publication is where I first met her in 2009, when I was a new freelancer and still very much learning about how this business works. As an editor, Jenny was patient, supportive and fun to write for, and we've kept in touch since. With her long history of sitting in the editor's chair and dealing with the daily deluge of story pitches, she has a finely tuned sense of what editors want from their freelance contributors. We discussed this topic in a conversation that took place in Brisbane in early December, as well as how Jenny's substance use overlapped with her creativity, how she was misrepresented as a, quote, middle-class supergroupie by an NME journalist at age 18, what that experience taught her about having a duty of care toward the people she writes about, why British editorial staff tend to get preferential treatment in the Australian publishing industry, what happened at JMag when somebody at the ABC accidentally leaked the winner of the radio station's annual Hottest 100 poll in 2009, and how her early career writing for porn mags helped her to write graphic sex scenes for Cherry Bomb. Introducing Jenny Valentish, author, freelance journalist and editor. Jenny Valentish, welcome.
Thank you.
We're in your hotel and room in Brisbane. What are you doing in Brisbane?
I'm up here on a research trip, so I'm interviewing some academics who are specialists in addiction for my book, which is about women in addiction and the problems pertinent to women, and also in what's commonly known as recovery, but I don't particularly like that term. But recovery is quite geared towards men, I think, so I wanted to look into that as well.
How did this idea come about? Because you wrote for a Saturday paper earlier this year, I believe, about addiction, and then there was another piece in Sydney Morning Herald Spectrum.
Yeah. It wasn't in Spectrum, it was in the main paper, but
yes.
Yeah, and I've done stuff for the big issue about addiction in the monthly. So I basically wanted to expand on that. It's a topic close to my heart because I stopped drinking 6 years ago. And I still like to talk about it all the time. Not necessarily, talk about it in conversation, but I like to think about it and write about it. And I guess it's as much an obsession as it ever was in that sense. And I think you get that quite a lot. I don't know if you've seen the website The Fix.
Yeah.
Which is amazing, US-based website. Just full of people's addiction stories and news stories and the latest breakthroughs. And, it's all people who are sober, but it's their main sort of focus in life still.
Yeah, they picked up my Reddit heroin story a few months ago
great.
And rewrote that, and might have forgotten.
They rewrote it?
Might have forgotten to link to the original piece. I can't quite remember.
I see.
But so yes, I'm aware of them. All right. Well, 6 months, is that your decision or your publisher's?
publishers. But it's been brewing. It's funny actually. It's been brewing for over 6 years. So I originally pitched it to an agent when I was still at it. And I flew to Sydney to meet the agent and went out the night before and then came round next day and I'd missed my meeting with her. And she was very nice about it, but we agreed that perhaps it wasn't the right time.
Yeah, right.
So, and even to wait, until you're a couple of years sober, probably for me wouldn't have been the right time to write this book. I needed to be able to look at it very objectively, as a journalist, rather than someone who's in the thick of it.
Does talking about it help you in your situation?
Well, my situation feels really steady and sturdy, and I don't really see myself as being in a situation. But it's just, something that I feel like a bit of an expert on the topic. And I've read a lot on the topic, and I read so many people's memoirs, and I read so many textbooks, and I read so many blogs and news stories. So, probably more than music, which people think of me, I think they think of me as a music journalist. Probably more than music, it's an area of expertise.
Mm-hmm. Well, you don't like it being referred to as an addiction memoir, but have you read many in that field, and what have you noticed about what works and what doesn't? I
have read a lot, and they all tend to be by white middle-class women, so I really didn't want to add to the canon. Because you're just getting one story, really. So I wanted to do immersive journalism in the sort of vein of John Ronson or Anna Kreen or... Helen Garner, where you come with me on the journey to meet people and you're seeing them through my eyes, and, maybe on the plane back I'll sort of mull over what I've just been told and you'll mull with me. So I wanted to do it that way. So there is a personal kind of slant to it, but at the same time we're meeting the experts in the field, and we're learning the latest kind of breakthroughs. A lot of them will be conflicting, of course, because it's one of those areas where there is no correct answer to any question.
Is that challenging for you as a journalist to try and muddle through and find the clearest threads?
It hasn't stopped anyone in the past, because all these memoirs tended to be from people who are in AA. So they were quite happy to, basically portray addiction as being a disease and this is the way that you get over it. But no, I will... I'm going to be constantly reminding the reader that this is one theory, and then there's this other theory, and then in the States they commonly believe this. And I'll make all that clear in the intro as well. Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be a reliable narrator?
That's funny you should say that, because I'm actually specifically saying that I'm not a reliable narrator, probably in that intro.
Yeah, right.
But I quite like that sense of... can she even remember? Can she even remember what she's talking about? But yeah, so every chapter will have at least one expert opinion on it, because every chapter is a different topic. So you're not relying on me. You're going to come with me as I meet someone.
It sounds like you've got it storyboarded out in some way.
Oh yeah, every chapter is completely planned.
Was that part of the proposal?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think you have to do that for non-fiction.
I haven't.
Well, you're the exception then. I mean, my understanding is that you kind of need to write a sample chapter, or at least a really thorough synopsis, and then a chapter breakdown. But you've already got a non-fiction book under your belt.
True. So
that helps.
But even with the first one, the only person I had lined up who said yes was Phil Jamieson.
Oh, yeah.
So the publisher kind of gave me some money on a wing and a prayer, saying, yeah, he's a music journo, you can probably get some of these people.
Yeah, well, that was a safe bet, knowing, your back catalogue.
Yes, right. Well, I want to go back to your back catalogue.
Okay.
You've been in publishing for quite a while. Mm-hmm. Before we get to that, though, how has creativity overlapped with your own substance use over the years? Has one helped or hindered the other?
Well, I thought it was helping. In my early 20s, I was massively into speed. And so I put 3/4 of a gram in my drink every morning and then go to work, but write all day as well. So, I mean, at the time I was actually a publicist, music publicist, but I would always be writing on the side, and then I'd come home and just write into the small hours. And I was trying to write a book as well, which was a novel. And I would write and write and write and write, so I thought it was working. But, you know, it was, at the time, of course, you think it's brilliant, and then you look over it the next day, and it's terrible. So I don't even think anything has survived from that period. Certainly, none of the fiction got published. It was so indulgent, self-indulgent.
Yeah.
And it was just reams and reams and reams of crap, basically. So I don't think it did help. I did worry when I gave it all up that my creativity would die with it. Not true at all. And the other thing is I always used to write in pubs.
All right.
Because it just felt like the perfect writing environment. You know, you can go in, imbibe, have a nook and a cranny to write in, especially if it's an English pub. And to me, that was the most obvious writing environment. But I just write in cafes now. So all is well. Yeah.
Was that an attempt to emulate anyone in particular, the writing in pubs thing, or just felt right?
No, not at all. Just it just meant that I could have a cider in one hand and a cigarette in the other, and another hand to write with.
You have 3 hands, strangely. I'm noticing for the first time. Where did you grow up, Jenny?
Well, I grew up in Slough till I was 18, which is where the office is set. And I think that kind of really gave me the fire to, well, get out first, because it's a really disappointing place to grow up. But it also instilled this strong sense of escapism. So I used to write a fanzine from the age of 16 onwards, and it was basically just so I could meet older people and meet bands and just open, you know, a portal into an older world. And then I moved to London when I was 18.
What was the impulse? Had you read a lot of zines that were tickling your fancy at that time?
Yeah, I was obsessed by zines. In fact, I did my degree dissertation on the American Underground Press. My favourite was Roller Derby by Lisa Suckdog, as she called herself then. Lisa Carver, she's a brilliant writer. There was Ben is Dead. It was a big glossy American one. I just collected as many as humanly possible, basically, from all the London record shops.
Did you have an older sibling who was turning you onto this stuff?
Yeah. Not zines, no. But music. I've got a brother who's 5 years older, so yeah, I used to read his Kerrangs when I was 10, which is 1985, and that was like a great time to be reading Kerrang. Because it was all your cock rock, and it was all really exciting. Like, these people gave good interviews. And so I can remember how a lot of the articles started, you know, because I'd pore over them to that degree. And then it was The Enemy, Melody Maker and Sounds. And their writers, Melody Maker wasn't as bad, or was it Sounds? Sounds wasn't as bad, but Melody Maker and Enemy, their writers were super snarky. And the idea was to stitch bands up, have a laugh at their expense. And, you know, I thought it was hilarious. And that was what I was doing in my fanzine writing. I'd get really drunk because I was shy, and then blunder through a terrible interview, and then write it up verbatim, you know, with all its awkwardness and tact, but take the piss as well. And I would have continued that way, I think, had I not then been stitched up for myself really badly by an Enemy writer, which gave me the insight into how it feels. And this was when I was 18, so it's before I'd really started on a career. And so now, ever since, I've been really, really careful about not doing that to anybody else, I think.
Well, I'll go back and contact anyone you've ever interviewed and see how they do.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I've got a clean record.
How are you stitched up? By whom?
By Stephen Wells. Do you know who that is?
I heard the name through Everett True.
Yeah, so he used to call himself Swells. And he was an Enemy journalist. And I wrote to him, I was probably 17, and I sent him my work. basically I wanted him to recognise me as this brilliant gonzo journalist and lift me forth. I heard back from him, and this is where our stories differ. I heard back from him and he said, I'm doing an article for the Sunday Observer, which is a massive national newspaper, on female fanzine writers. Do you want to be in it? And I was like, yes! And I was so excited.
I've arrived.
Yeah, totally thought I'd arrived. And then, so he interviewed me on the day I left home. So my parents were moving me into this house in London as he was sat there interviewing me. And then it emerged as he started to talk to me that it was just all about groupies. I've forgotten to explain something very key here. My fanzine was called Slapper, the Groupie's Guide to Gropable Bands. But... Which
is ironic.
It intended
to be ironic,
it's
right?
Ironic.
He took it literally.
He didn't, like, 'cause he'd seen it. But it was just an angle. Like, I knew even at that age, you've got to have a hook and you've got to have an angle. And so I thought, I can't just have a fanzine called, Rock On or something stupid. It's got to stand out. And so I came up with that because I thought it was funny and, there was a smidgen of wishful thinking in it, but I was still living at home at the time. And so, he'd seen it and he'd seen that it was taking the piss. But yeah, so he started interviewing me about being a new breed of middle-class super groupie, as if I was spearheading this movement. And I clearly wasn't, and I couldn't help him out of his line of questioning. He was getting quite frustrated. And he started going, "You're a child of Thatcher, you're a child of Thatcher," because he's very, he was a socialist, and quite outspoken about that, because he was trying to get the middle-class angle and stuff. And anyway, it appeared a few weeks later in the paper, and it was a full page with my photo, my shaved head sat amongst a whole bunch of slapper fanzines at my mum and dad's house who clearly weren't there when the photo was taken.
Yeah.
And it made out that I had this SWAT team of middle-class groupies, and we were just going out, hanging around stage doors and administering blowjobs and stuff. And so he completely stitched me up. And then every paper and TV program under the sun was trying to contact me via my parents' house, and
Whoa.
it became not fun anymore.
Holy shit, you became the centre of a story.
Yeah, but it was kind of pre-internet, and I'm so happy about that. Because if it happened now, it would still be out there.
Yeah.
Well, it is now, but...
Well, yeah. Thank you for bearing your soul and your 17-year-old history.
Yeah. I was 18 by the time it came out. But even so, I just... The week it came out, I started university, and so everyone had seen it there. My new housemates had seen it.
What kind of social ramifications did it have?
On an annoying level, every time I went to a gig and said I'm on the guest list, the publicist would put me down as Jenny Slapper. And I thought it was kind of ironic that publicists would take that angle, given that most of them were probably sleeping with bands anyway. I feel like we're getting way off topic here.
It's all on topic. It's all about you, Jenny.
So anyway, this gave me the impetus to not treat other people like that, and always have a sense of responsibility and a duty of care, because I felt like he should have, even if he feels that, well, he's actually dead now, but even if he felt that his story was completely legit, you're talking about a teenage girl. So whoever I'm interviewing, if they reveal quite a lot to me, I always drop my name into the copy as I'm reading it back and see
really?
How would I feel about this. And sometimes I'll even contact someone and say, look, are you sure you wanted to say that?
Wow.
Which, doesn't do me any favours as a journalist, but I would just rather have that peace of mind that I'm not potentially ruining someone's year.
Strong personal ethics.
Yes, in some areas.
Once bitten.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, so at what age did you realise, having absorbed all those Kerangs and animes, that this is something that you wanted to do for career?
Well, I was writing... Do you mean music journalism specifically? Journalism?
Yeah.
Well, Mum actually sent me some stuff recently that I used to build my own Cindy house, like Barbie house. and I'd made little magazines to go in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was when I was about 10, and I basically mocked up my own versions of smash hits, but thorough. So I'd say it started around 10, but I started fanzining when I was 16.
Did you see that as your future? Like, this is what I'm going to do and be known for?
Yeah, I did until the Stephen Wells experience.
Yeah.
And then it completely put me off, and I stopped writing. Well, I stopped doing the fanzine. I did the odd interview for some magazines, but I moved into book publishing. I worked for a crime fiction publisher. I was very disillusioned with the whole music press thing. Also because I'd been a music publicist and I'd had to be on the phone to all these inky journalists all the time.
Inky?
Yeah, Inky's being Enemy, Melody Maker and Sounds.
Okay.
And I just felt like they were completely like buying into their own myths and up their own asses. And so yeah, I felt a bit disillusioned. So I got into book publishing. And I learnt tons from this really small crime fiction publisher in London called the Do Not Press, and he taught me more about, grammar and formatting and that kind of thing than anybody else.
That was your apprenticeship as a writer?
Yeah.
As editor as well?
Editor,
Yeah, because you've been a journalist and editor alongside each other for quite a while, as I understand it.
Yeah, so that would have been the start of the editing. So that was when I was 23, I think.
Did you have a lot of self-belief in your own abilities?
Yes.
From a young age?
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, because I used to do things like, at primary school, I'd do things like write plays, and then the whole year would have to put on a play and that kind of thing. And I used to write the Slough Times on my typewriter at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd always been told I was really good at it. So I'm definitely not an all-rounder with other subjects, but I always knew that this one was in the bag.
Did that ever cause any problems socially?
At school?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What did they say about you, Jenny?
Oh, I was the SWAT.
Yeah.
Well, that's just the main word that I was called.
Teacher's pet sort of thing?
I definitely wasn't a teacher's pet. I was quite antagonistic, but yeah, the SWAT.
Yeah, right. Well-read, highly self-regarding, and clearly destined for big things.
Yeah, but then my ego took a massive hit at the next school because it was all about science and maths, and I just went dropped like a stone.
So what did you study at university?
American Studies. Again, escapism. You got to go to America for a bit, and I wanted to be there. And I was one of those kids that spoke with an American accent. I'm so sorry.
Really?
Yeah. You hear that quite a lot now. Don't you? I hear it on trams and stuff. Because of TV.
I don't tend to absorb the world around me when I'm...
journalist.
When I'm on assignment I do, but when I'm on public transport I'm like headphones in, podcasts, and yeah.
Well, yeah, so I did until I was probably about 26, and one of my friends just took me aside and told me I sounded like an idiot, and I was really mortified.
Yeah. Why has it taken so long for someone to tell me?
It was quite a long time, isn't it? Yeah,
right. So, Do Not Press, what was the name of the person who hired you and taught you so much?
Yeah, Jim Driver. He was hugely into music as well. That tended to be kind of Gina Washington sort of style stuff. And he was a beer writer as well. But yeah, he mainly liked to do sort of gritty, kind of hard-boiled British crime.
Did you enjoy reading that stuff?
Yeah.
Was there anything? Were you kind of like an omnivore? You would absorb anything around you?
No. In fact, apart from what I was reading at work, I tended to read books by women my age because I was very competitive and I wanted my book to come out, which I'm really glad it didn't. But
this is the one you're writing on speed.
Yeah, it's awful. It's called Lady Muck. Oh, the title's just terrible. So I was mainly reading the competition and sort of winding myself up. I don't do that anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Good.
Life's too short.
Yes, good attitude. How long were you at the publisher, the crime publisher?
2.5 years, I think. And I used to there was one disaster, because eventually he trusted me to sort of edit the books pretty much on my own, and then he'd give them a once over. And there was one I did back in the days of floppy disks, and somehow I returned to him the version that only the first chapter had been edited, and he didn't check it, which is his fault. And it went out, yeah.
With lots of typos and grammar errors and things.
Yeah, so the author obviously complained, although they were his typos. I don't know how he suddenly noticed them.
Yes.
Somebody must have pointed them out.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh.
So you definitely need more than one pair of eyes.
Were you looking just at like a line editing sort of thing, or were you looking at the overall structure and advising on the story?
No, as the line editor.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it didn't get a structural edit.
Kind of just came in as the author intended.
Well, yeah, it was a very small budget, so maybe I won't sort of go too much into the work processes of a different person.
Yeah, sure. What was the market for crime fiction like in England at that time?
Oh, I wouldn't say it was particularly hungry.
Yeah.
No.
What kind of advances were we talking for authors back then?
No idea.
Yeah, right.
No, I didn't get into that kind of thing. It's probably the same as it is now, though, even though it was about 20 years ago.
Yeah. What was the next step from there?
Porn.
Porn?
Yes, because it would have been I was looking for my first staff job at a magazine, because I decided I'd forgiven magazines, and I'd try that again. And for a first-time staffer, to me, the options were either business-to-business magazine or porn. So obviously I went for porn. And I worked for Paul Raymond, who I never met, but he's the porn mogul in London. He sort of owns Soho.
What kind of mags are we talking?
Club Confidential, Club International, Razzle.
Yeah, right.
Men only.
Men only. Great name. What was your role? What were you doing?
I was a sub-editor, and funnily enough, my editor is female, and the editor just down the hall from us was female, but mostly everybody else was a guy, and they were all in the same position as me in that they were looking for, it was an entry-level thing, and they were all into their kind of hip-hop magazines and trying to launch their own, so they were quite cliquey. So my job as sub-editor was to basically write the entire magazine, from the editor's letter sometimes to the interviews with the girls in the, picture stories, which were always made up.
Always?
Yeah. I wrote all the readers' letters because we did get them. We did get readers' letters, but you could never publish them. They're either just the tone was frightening, and they're always from prisons as well.
Yeah, right.
Not that matters, but or they were really fawning and trying to ask the girls out on dates in a really overly romantic way. So none of them printable. So they're American, so I was always pretending to be a bloke from one of the states. And my only idea of America at that point, really, because I hadn't been for a few years, was from Jerry Springer. So all my characters had Jerry Springer names.
Did any readers notice that it was all made up and that you...
I don't think they read the words.
So it's like your role was almost superfluous. Like,
it was a ridiculous job. Like, who reads that?
Did you find it rewarding?
No, I was drinking extremely heavily at the time, and it allows... It was just the same thing every day. You're just writing the same shit every day, but moving like different parts of the body in different areas. So you could do it really hungover. And so I did it for 2 years, which is way too long, but it was quite well paid as well.
Yeah, right.
But it was depressing because, it was really funny for the first 2 weeks, and it just becomes a bit wearing, and then the back of the magazines are full of ads for like quite dodgy films. So even though what we were doing wasn't particularly dodgy, you're just surrounded by the dodgy stuff as well.
Did that experience change how you saw the world in any particular
Were you
way?
going to say sex and then change your mind?
No.
Um,
Although you can answer that if you want as well.
No. I don't think I was that naive. But it was when I quit that job that I moved to Australia for the first time, and I had the feeling that it's time for a new start. So I wouldn't go back to a job like that.
Was everyone in that world jaded, or were they passionate people?
Yeah, mixture. Some of the senior staff really enjoyed their work. I mean, as jobs go, it's not bad. As I say, it wasn't that demanding, but year-round, sort of quite interesting people. Everyone was fairly alternative.
Mm-hmm. And what were you reading at that point while writing for these adult mags?
What kind of reading material?
Yeah, like journalism or fiction, or paying attention to the competition still, or had you moved on?
I think I've moved on. I was trying to write another book, but they always seem to be about somebody quite like me, and then the problem was, even though it wasn't intended to be, the problem was I was always going through dramas, and then the way I process anything that's distressing is to write about it. So you end up just living in your own stupid reality, but on paper. So again, I didn't really do anything with that. I was getting lots of stories published in anthologies, though. That was a bit safer. But reading-wise... I was really into stuff like James Ellroy, American Crime.
That's interesting what you said about processing drama through writing about it. I read that kind of, almost that exact same phrase in Neil Strauss's new book recently. And
is that another pickup book? What is it?
No, it's 10 years after the game. It's about his last 4 years of his life and how he's he's realised about himself through relationships and fidelity and all that sort of thing.
Boring.
It's a great book. I love it.
Is it?
Yes. But he like you and like me, he puts things down on the page to work out what's going on about the world around him.
Yeah, and the vast majority of the time when I do that, it's never going to see the light of day, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But the very act of writing something down, for me, turns it into fiction, and then it can't hurt you anymore. So it's really powerful.
Do you journal? Do you keep a diary?
No, I used to when I was in my teens and early 20s, and then when I moved to Australia, what's the word? Shredded is the word. I shredded them all in a desktop shredder, which took fucking ages. I just thought, I do not need to be taking this with me. It was the speed era. So it was just ramble, hardly readable. Every thought that had passed through my head at 4 a.m. sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's all
It'd be handy for now, though.
It's all just exactly what were you thinking now? So it's all been destroyed, but the very fact that you sat there for dozens or hundreds or thousands of hours writing things down, that's obviously fed into who you are today and the work that you've done.
I don't know, actually. That's a bit different because that's different to me now. Thinking, look, something's upsetting me, and I'm going to actually sit down and write about it. It was more like a stream of consciousness or almost unconsciousness. So I don't really feel like that was particularly therapeutic. The journaling,
right?
Yeah,
and shredding them all was a symbolic act.
That was therapeutic.
Yeah. So Australia, what year was that you first came here?
First came here in 2002.
Hold on, am I missing the publicist part of your career?
Yeah, that was 96.
How long? You did that for about a year, is that right?
Yeah, I got fired after 6 months, actually.
So less than a year. What happened? What happened, Jenny? Did they feel like crossing to the dark side?
I used to intern for them for 2 years, and it was when I was writing Slapper, and they kind of took me under their wing and thought I was like their little mascot, and they thought I was quite amusing. But I used to do things like turn up to intern, leave my slider outside their door, go in and work, go out at lunchtime, pick it back up again, and they knew that. And so I was as surprised as anyone when they offered me a proper job. And I think they expected me to stop all that behaviour, but I didn't. And I found it impossible to talk to these inky journalists on the phone without being on speed. So there was that. And also it was one of those jobs where, because they're doing you a favour because you're getting to work in the creative industry, they were paying me £8,000 a year, pounds a year. Sorry, so that's about $16,000.
Yeah. In what year? 96.
6.
Yeah.
I reckon that would come to about 30 grand over here now.
Yeah.
So it was rubbish. And I just assumed, because I'd got this great job straight out of uni, that would continue, that luck. And it didn't really. After they fired me because I had a tantrum in the bathroom and all the tiles fell off the wall.
Fell off the wall?
I hit them and they fell off the wall. I didn't mean them to fall off the wall. They just told me that I just had my pay review and they told me that it wasn't going to go up, but they were going to keep me on. And so I went out into the bathroom and everything went...
And they're like, that's coming out of your pay.
No, they just let me go. But, so after that I did a bit of freelance publicity here and there. But it wasn't really making ends meet. I was being a cleaner at the same time. So it wasn't until I got the job at the Do Not Press where I probably got back on the ladder again.
Right. Just tell me a bit about what you learned from music publicity, because I, as you know, deal with them occasionally, and they're always pitching me and like, will you listen to this? Can you review this? And what's that like for someone?
It's horrible.
Why?
Well, it was okay if it was a band that people wanted, but we did so many bands that you just knew nobody's going to want to hear this yet another American college band on a label nobody's interested in. So you're just like setting yourself up for abuse, and it was always on the phone then as well. I feel sympathy for publicists, but then some people enjoy it more than I did. I think it's important not to resort to publicist language, and I was talking to Justin, my husband, this morning, telling him I've actually said I'm reaching out twice this week because I've absorbed publicist language, whereas I could just say approach or something. Yeah. So my advice to a publicist would be to not be too publicist-y. But I can certainly feel sympathy for someone who's trying to sell you something, especially if you don't 100% believe in what you're selling. But hopefully you're in a position where you can take on clients that you do believe in, and then that's really obvious when a publicist believes in what they're selling.
Cool. So Australia, that was a big move. Why here?
I was married to an Australian. We got married in London, lived there for a few years, and then we moved to Sydney. And I got a job at Ralph magazine, which is now passed away.
Was that easy to get a job in Australian publishing?
Yeah, I actually got the job before I'd even set foot over here. Oh, wait, hang on. So I've been over here twice. Now I'm getting confused. So the first time I came over, it was more working holidays. I wasn't married yet. So it was a working holiday visa, and it was all working in pubs. So nothing to report there. But the second time, when I was moving permanently with my husband, I started applying for jobs before I got here, just kind of to practice, thinking, of course, I'm not going to get one. And Ralph was published by ACP, which is now Bauer, and the editor wrote back and said, we do need a chief sub. Can you do these tests overnight? And then I got a job. And I was told when I came over by the editor that the British get preferential treatment in the Australian publishing industry, mainly because we've learnt grammar. I know some Australians have, but for many there seems to be about a 30-year period where it just wasn't being taught. So I was told, I don't know if it's true or not, but I was told that the HR departments of the bigger publishing companies look for British CVs.
Right. What a scam. That's racism, basically.
Well, now everyone knows to tweak their CVs.
Born in London.
Yeah.
How was that job at Ralph? How long were you there?
I was there 6 months, and then I got offered the editor's role of JMag. I liked Ralph. I actually enjoyed the magazine. I enjoyed the very colloquial tone, especially because I was new to Australia, and that was quite a novelty. It wasn't that easy in terms of, while probably half the staff were women, I don't think... Well, most of them weren't editorial. So I felt a bit sort of stranded in that respect. But it was alright.
You were just dealing with the copy as it came in?
Yes. Yeah.
Did they have many freelancers at that time, or many staff?
Yeah, the staff, I reckon it had about 7 editorial staff, which is not bad, really. And that's not including art. And then it has, its own fashion editorial and that kind of thing. Yeah, what's the question?
I want to ask you, I forget that question, I want to ask you about working in a bar, because how did that recreation and...
Working in a bar?
Yeah. Were you behind the bar? Bartending?
Are you asking if I used to drink behind the bar?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Of course I did.
Yeah. Tell me about that culture, and is that a common thing among bartenders in your experience?
Oh, yeah. There was one in Slough, because when I first went to Australia for my working holiday, I then returned home to my parents for a bit. And there was one in Slough where the drinking culture is just off the scale, that our boss used to give all the staff an ecstasy pill each before we started our shift so that we could cope. Because people were just so aggressive. They'd be 3 deep at the bar. Underage drinking was encouraged, and they had all these deals like 3 for 2 alcohol pops and stuff. So yeah, there's definitely in both countries a culture of drinking while you're working.
Wouldn't that put you on a different level to people who are getting aggressively drunk, though? Because you're kind of feeling...
We can't get aggressive back, can you?
You're quite euphoric and lovey-dovey, and they're just like, give me a fucking...
I wouldn't say euphoric, just sort of numb.
What have you learned about why people drink, Jenny? Or why did you drink in particular?
I thought it was because I was depressed, because I was when I started, but actually I think it was more... sociophobia, I think, and possibly even ADHD. I'm getting tested for that at the minute.
That's part of the book.
Of course. Just this real restlessness around people and finding it hard to sort of, or being reluctant to join in with conversations and things. So I would really have a head start before I even met up with people. And I just... particularly at puberty and as an adolescent, I didn't like to be around people at all. And so to have this secret bottle of vodka in my bag all the time was like a security blanket and like a secret that would sort of fortify me in more than one way.
Then how did that evolve as you moved into young adulthood?
I basically carried a bottle of vodka on me for the next 20 years.
Right.
And part of the joy of that was people not knowing
your secret.
Yeah, that literally you can just stick your hand in your bag and touch it and go.
Was it a secret though? Were people around you noticing?
They'd know that I was drunk, but they wouldn't know how.
Right. Okay. Ralph for a while, and then JMag. How did that come about?
Well, JMag was published by News Limited for the ABC. So News Custom Publishing was doing it, which was in Melbourne. So my husband and I moved to Melbourne. And my publisher, Dan McDonnell, was great. He was like your old school news journalist. And would always talk about the good old days. And he actually was always inquiring about my weekends and how hard I'd gone and but you got drunk last night, didn't you?
And you're like, yes.
Not just me, and all the staff.
All right.
He was from that period where it was part of the job.
Right. And that appealed.
Yeah, although I was nearing the end at that point. Yes. So at some point I stopped, and then I just sort of, whenever he asked me that question, I'd go, yeah, Dan.
So what year was that you started at JMag?
2006.
What was your relationship with
2007.
Triple J at that time? Was it on your radar? Were you a listener?
Yeah, we used to listen to it, Ralph.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely on my radar. So it was a bit of an awkward relationship though, because News Limited, or News Corp now, I think the stereotype of that is the people who work for it are quite mercenary and ruthless, whereas the ABC is the complete opposite. So we were fighting against stereotypes all the time. Like, there'd be about 7 people at the ABC. You'd have to approve everything that I did because it was custom publishing. And my boss would be going, "Oh, give him hell, Jen," you know. "Don't take no for an answer. Don't back down."
Yeah. That's when I first met you in 2009-ish, I think. I started pitching you stories. And I was always struck by that strange arrangement where every idea had to be put up the flagpole to see if Triple J would give it the tick.
It was pretty frustrating, but that's what custom publishing is. And I didn't really grasp or accept that. Probably because the job, as it was presented to me by news, was, you know, it looked like I'd have a lot more autonomy. And then the reality was a bit different, but I never let go of that hope. But yeah, custom publishing always involves clients and multiple people at the other end approving every step of the way. So it wasn't really that unusual. But it being the ABC, they had to be ultra careful about everything they did.
What was your workload like at that time when you were the editor? Were those big weeks?
Yeah, huge. Yeah, I remember when we did the first issue and then we sent it off to the printer, we were on a massive high and we felt like we should be carried aloft on people's shoulders. And that lasted a few days, and then we realised, oh shit, we're supposed to be well into the next one by now. So it's this endless kind of hamster wheel. But I'd say it got worse at subsequent publications.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We'll come to that.
It's worse for everyone now.
Yeah.
Everyone's being pushed harder.
So you were a writer-editor. You were doing interviews and stories yourself.
Yeah, but more of an editor than a writer.
Yeah. You had freelancers around at least the capital cities. Were you recruiting people, or did you have a bunch of people who were recommended to you? Like, how did you manage freelancers?
Both. Obviously, you kind of prefer to find your own. You get your favourites, and that's quite frustrating for freelancers if you're not somebody's favourite. But some of them I inherited because prior to me joining, it had been a quarterly. So obviously, I didn't have that many contacts, but I had been like monitoring things like mess and noise and seeing who all the regular people were who write. So I would approach people, and also JMag often used musicians as writers, so I'd approach people like Dan Luskin's a great writer from the Drones, people like that.
That wasn't the first time you worked with freelancers, but maybe in that role it was a bit more hands-on than in the past. What did you like to see from freelancers, and what pissed you off?
My biggest gripe is when people write way bigger than the word count and just think magically that you're going to publish the whole thing and make it fit. That's just so either naive or rude. Although I have heard some editors say they prefer stuff to be over so they can whittle it down. But I don't. I prefer it to be on the dot. If anything, I'd like to pad it out myself. Given the option. Lateness. Really obvious stuff. Anything like cliches you can fix. But you can't fix those two things. Well, you can, but it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah. How far in advance were those pages assigned for that magazine? Are we talking months?
I think it was about 6 weeks. Do you mean commissioned or?
Yeah.
Maybe 2 months.
Because I remember the art design in that magazine in particular being quite different. Like, you'd have all sorts of things coming out of the side of the pages and the stories would be squashed into odd angles. Okay. Next question.
Well, that's got nothing to do with me. That's the designer's point of view.
Cool. There was one. I'm pretty sure you were still at the magazine at that time. Were you there when it ended?
No.
Okay.
Thankfully, I've always gone before every magazine I've worked at has folded.
Overboard before the ship goes.
Yeah.
I think you were the editor when the Hottest 100 cover came out.
Yeah.
Can you describe that story for those who aren't familiar with it?
Alright, the way I remember it is we had, I think it was Mumford & Sons had topped the hottest 100 poll, so we had them on the cover. Obviously, it's not going to come out till after the hottest 100 is announced because it's all a big secret. But somebody at the ABC had managed to upload it to one of their pages.
Like an online store where you could pre-order the issue
it
or
was
something.
the ABC shop, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a bit of a shitstorm, but it meant there was a huge crackdown on you've got to be... you can't ever leave any pages in a printer and you need passwords on your computer and this and that. And we were thinking, but we didn't do this. But sure, okay, we'll take those precautions.
Were people angry at you directly as the editor? No. Did you cop it?
No, I saw lots of comments on message boards from sort of Triple J haters just making sarcastic comments, but no, I didn't personally cop anything. Did I?
I'm asking you. I can't recall. What was that moment when you saw that page, or when the email went around saying, "What the fuck is this?" Did you have a laugh, or were you mortified?
Well, it was a different culture at News Limited. It was we were our own team, so we might have had a bit of a laugh.
That's good.
But
you have to laugh. What else can you do?
Exactly. Yes.
It's out in the world.
It's a positive thing.
Yeah, I recall that year's Hottest 100 poll being damage control, because I was probably at a party, some countdown party, and everyone knows the answer.
Yeah.
So there's no mystery. It was a memorable year.
I don't think it was that much of a disaster. It got everyone talking about the Hottest 100.
Right. These stories seem to come around at least once a year. Last year being with Taylor Swift, I suppose.
Yeah, what happened?
This year, rather. All people are trying to get Taylor Swift in the Hottest 100.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But, yes.
Yeah, see, I don't think that sort of thing harms the station at all.
It's all about starting conversations and keeping the audience engaged and eyeballs and all that sort of thing.
It's the sort of thing you could do almost deliberately. Not that we did, but you could.
Sure. What was next for you after JMag?
Time Out. That was a dream job because... I read Time Out as a kid. I was a teenager and in London, and used to circle everything in it, and it was, a bit of a Bible. And, we were kind of working to the London blueprint. You can have a bit of leeway, but it just meant that it was this tried and trusted formula that it's really hard to mess up. And we didn't.
Is that a weekly publication?
It is in London, or it was, sorry, but now it's monthly in Melbourne and Sydney.
Mm-hmm. So that was a pretty easy adjustment to move from one monthly to another.
But it's a real tough time for a publication like Time Out, because you've got, Melbourne, you've got all street press for free, and then you have broadsheet, and everyone's doing this kind of thing online, and because there wasn't deemed to be enough going on in Melbourne and Sydney, it was a monthly. And how vital is a monthly listings magazine, So it was really fun to work on, but I didn't feel like it had the same vitality that Time Out did when I was growing up.
Were you also commissioning features and interviews and all that stuff? It
was such a great job because you could basically interview whoever the hell you wanted, and it would fit into some section. So I wrote so much for that magazine. And, a lot of dreams came true for me.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, commissioning, by now I had some really great contacts, and we had our regular section editors. Yeah.
What have you learned about interviewing over the years? You've probably done 1,000 plus by now.
Yeah.
What makes a good interview? Either verbally or in print.
I really... they say that music journalists are frustrated musicians. I'm a frustrated psychologist, so I just want to know what makes people tick. And if you're genuinely asking the questions that you want to know the answers for, that's a good start, rather than what you think you need to be asking, although you can ask some of those too. But the best thing is just to think, what do I want to know? What do they want to be asked? What would really make them open up? What's a cleverer way of asking something that's going to annoy them?
Softening the edges.
Yeah, I mean, just like, for instance, say it was a band that's been around forever, big band. You know, you can find out what the dynamic's like by saying something a bit silly, like, you know, who do you sit next to on the long haul flight? Just something a little bit different to get a different answer for the same question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love doing profiles more than anything else.
You had one on the weekend, Brian Wilson, which I enjoyed a lot.
Oh, good.
How much time did you have with him on the phone?
20 minutes. And so I knew that it might be tricky with him. So I interviewed a whole bunch of other people. Like in the online version, there's about 10 people I've interviewed.
All right.
And that tends to be a bit of a fault of mine. I tend to go overboard when I'm writing and overreach. It turned out well, but it just means that you're spending like 3 times as long on one feature as you need to.
Yeah.
Do you do that?
I certainly have in the past. Cast the net much wider than necessary, but yeah, I've realised that there is a limit to doing that, and it becomes inefficient or not the best way to spend one's time.
But you can accidentally discover other stories along the way if you're doing that.
True. How do you pick a place to start in writing a profile like that, like the Brian Wilson, for example? Does it come to you easily?
I have a document called structure when I'm writing any kind of feature, and then I'll just put the one-word summary of the different points, either that they've already said or that I think they're going to say, and then I'll put them in an order so that obviously the first paragraph's got to be extremely hooky.
Yeah.
With him, I was being commissioned to write about Pet Sounds, which is obviously the album where he was considered to be a genius, but at the same time it didn't sell very well at all at the time. And then I noticed that the lyrics to one of the songs were basically preempting the reaction that this album was going to get. And he was basically saying in the song that he was way ahead of his time and nobody was going to get it. So I started with that.
That was a good hook. That was a good lead.
Yeah, well, and then he backed it up with some quotes, so that was handy.
It fit into your structure.
Yes, thanks, Brian.
How did you come across that method? Has that been honed over many years, or have you been doing that for quite a while?
Oh, I just think it naturally started with when you've transcribed something, just putting subheads down the transcription to mark, oh, this paragraph's about, you know, the rider or whatever. And then it just became more obvious to do it in a separate document so you can move it around. Probably some people use post-it notes. You can literally move them around.
Do you enjoy transcribing?
Yeah, actually, when I was at Time Out, I always got other people to do it, but there is definitely a value in it. Because you hear it, you hear them again, you hear the inflections, you can sort of see them. Yeah, I do actually.
You're the first person I met who said that. I was expecting hearty no. Thank you for surprising me.
Well, it depends how boring they were in the first place. Sometimes it can be just devastatingly dull.
Yes. All right, so following the chronology, time off.
Out.
Time out.
That happens a lot.
Well, I'm from Brisbane. Time
Exactly,
Off magazine is
street press.
Was known as one of the biggest street press. I wrote for Rave myself. That's my bias. How long were you at that magazine?
4 years. I can't remember if it was. I think it was just over. So basically, I launched it with a really small team who are amazing. Jemima Cody was the food and drink editor, and she's now with The Age, so she's their food and drink person. So 4 years, so I can't remember how many issues that was, but it was a really good experience.
Yeah, cool. Did you get to handpick much of your team around that time?
No, but I always tell people it's a great time to be an intern because quite a few interns at Time Out, both Sydney and Melbourne, became team members. So yeah, for those people I did. So for instance, the editor now, Rose, started off as my intern and then she got made lifestyle editor and then she's editor. And it really is, you do have an advantage being an intern, even though you're not getting paid for that spell, because you now know how that magazine works, and that's invaluable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even though we cast around for prospective employees with national ads, it tends to be the people who'd actually worked with us already.
Mm-hmm. Around that time, maybe concurrently, I'm sure you can correct me on the chronology, but you started at least one blog of your own, just apparently as a side venture.
Yeah, no, it started at JMag.
Tell me about that.
That was called Hey Man, Now You're Really Living, which is an Eels song. And it's an Eels song about where he's kind of given up on life and then decides, no, actually, try and find the beauty in life. And it was a mission where I had to do something new every day for a year. And I did it because I was a year and a half into quitting drinking, and I could just feel this chasm of despair opening up in front of me, like worryingly so. So I thought, I've got to do something drastic. And I went to a friend's father's funeral, and I didn't know him, I just knew my friend. And the eulogy was amazing. It was about how he used to be a yachtsman. He had cancer, and then he couldn't do that anymore, so then he took up the cello, and he couldn't do that anymore. So, with each thing that was taken away from him, he just decided to learn something else. So on his deathbed, he was reading a book on quantum physics. And partly it made me think, probably as everyone does at funerals, what would anyone say about me? I can't even think of anything nice that they could possibly say. That's the sort of frame of mind I was in. Yeah. But it also made me think, God, if he can do that in the face of existential pain and actual pain, then maybe I need to do something like that. So I set out to learn something new every day, which, as it turns out, is about the best thing you can possibly do if you've, given up alcohol or something. Because you need to create new habits to replace the old habits. You need to create these new pathways in your brain. So that you've got a habit to replace your old habit.
Yeah.
And so it meant meeting people I'd never met before. And, even if it was something like milking a cow, it would mean I'd have to approach a farmer. Can I milk the cows? Because I'm doing this blog. Yeah, it is funny, isn't it? And then I'd get to do it, and then I'd have to write it all up. And it would take it would distract me for quite a few hours a day. So I had my job as well.
Yeah.
So it left zero time for sort of standing on my porch, chain smoking and looking at the horizon, which is what I'd been doing up to that point. So it was great. It was actually a lifesaver.
Is that around the time that you moved out of Melbourne?
Yeah, so I moved to Castlemaine, and I'd split up with my husband. So, yeah, it was this kind of existential period where it's like, well, I've got the country house, but now I'm just like isolated. Willingly isolated, but isolated all the same.
Why Castlemaine?
Just because it was on a train line and I didn't drive at the time.
Yeah. What was your daily schedule like at that time to get into Melbourne to edit the mag?
Well, it was a 4.5 hour round trip.
Holy hell.
But that's when I would write the blog.
4.5 hours each day?
Yeah.
What time are you getting up and getting home?
Oh, we didn't start work till about 10:30.
Alright. Okay.
So you can get the 8:06. And go home to what?
Uh-huh.
There's nobody there and nothing to do.
So chain smoke and stare at the horizon.
Exactly. So yeah, I was writing the blog on the train, and then when the blog finished, I started writing my novel on the train. So that commute was actually really productive.
Yeah, for sure. That blog, doing something new each day, is there a connection between that instinct and starting out in zines at age 16? Just wanting to do something, create something?
I feel like I can't just write something for no reason. There's always got to be a purpose, even if it doesn't end up happening, like the failed novels in the past that nobody's ever seen. If I think at the time that it's for a purpose, that's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like, well, I could do these new things every day and then not be a witness and not put it on a blog, but it just didn't have the same kind of, there was no motivation to do that.
How far ahead of time did you draw up a list of things to do?
A few weeks.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Is there anything that evaded you that you couldn't? Yeah,
the final day was supposed to be, I wanted to go out with a bang, so I wanted to hook up with a stunt person and blow something up, but I couldn't find anyone to agree. So instead, I found this schoolgirl who was a bit of a pyro a pyromaniac, sorry.
How did you find her?
Through a friend. And she wishes to remain nameless.
Sure.
But, so she came round to a friend's house and she brought all these cans of butane gas and a wheelie bin that she'd prepared earlier and a stick. So to be fair, it was really her who did the last task, but I recorded it. There was no way I was going near that bin.
You bore witness to this explosion.
Just leaning into this bin with a fiery stick.
Oh man.
And there was just this pillar of flames that seemed to be about 20 foot high, and then all these cans of butane raining down everywhere. So that was great.
You went out with a bang.
Yeah.
Because I remember reading that blog. This was back in the days of RSS and Google Reader. It was one of the blogs I subscribed to.
I still don't know how that works.
I mean, it's kind of dead technology now, so
right.
don't worry about it.
Okay.
But how were you... I'm not even sure how I heard about it. How were you marketing it? Were you sharing it with people in your life, or did you just put it out there?
Nah, I wasn't. I was just putting it on Facebook, like my own Facebook page.
Yeah, right.
I just felt like as long as a couple of people are reading it, that was enough. Yeah. I mean, people were saying, I'll put it in a book, but it would have served its purpose by then, and the purpose was to not get depressed.
Yeah, right.
And I just needed some kind of validation where you can see in, Google Analytics that somebody's read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that was all right.
So was it a neat year of new things?
Yeah, but then I did... A couple of years later, I thought, that was great, I'll do it again. I did it for about 6 months, but it wasn't the same because I didn't need to do it then.
Yeah.
It had served its purpose.
What was the second blog called?
It was the same thing, I just did another 6 months.
Is it still online?
I took the next 6 months down because it just seemed it wasn't neat.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. So you started writing Cherry Bomb on the train.
Yep.
Tell us about Cherry Bomb.
I wanted to write a young adult book, which it ended up being marketed as adult, but I wanted to write a book about child abuse for young adults because I've worked a lot for women's mags and teen mags, and you never see that covered, and that's always really annoyed me. So I wanted to write a book that was really accessible, and so I set it in the music industry. And I just wanted to kind of disguise this plot, but put it in there so, it's not mentioned on the back cover or anything like that. And that people would sort of stumble across it, by which point they were emotionally invested.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I just wrote the whole thing without a publisher and an agent.
Huh.
And then started pitching it the moment I finished it, which was about 10 months. And Alan and Unwin wanted to publish it, but they wanted to publish it as adult.
Uh-huh.
What?
Did you have... did the plot shift? Did you have it all structured out before you wrote it, or did it shift a bit as you wrote?
To be honest, the plot was quite thin. The plot was following a band with 2 girls in it, and so it just followed the logical path that their band would take on the rise. So every step, like signing to a major, playing something like a Ute muster, playing a big charity festival, that kind of stuff, were just points along the way for each chapter. And then, of course, it all goes horribly wrong, because that's what happens.
Yeah. And they wanted to market it as an adult novel.
Yeah.
How did you receive that advice or feedback?
I was like, you want to publish me? Fine. Great. Want to change the name? Excellent.
Uh-huh.
I just threw in a few more sex scenes, which I was quite happy about, because I felt like it needed them, because it was a really sort of promiscuous character, and so now I didn't have to hold back and I could just go for it and explain a different kind of sex that you might normally read about in women's books. Not a particularly healthy kind.
Did that come easily to you, writing those scenes?
Yeah, because of the porn background.
Uh-huh, of course.
So yeah, I didn't have any trouble at all.
But there's an art to writing a good sex scene, because there's an award each year for the
Bad
worst sex scene.
Yeah. Well, I think you just need to get straight to the point and use the language that you would use in real life. So no throbbing anything. It's just cocks and fucks and cunts and things. Easy.
That's the pull quote for this podcast.
I'm hoping there isn't one.
And at what point did you or your publisher decide to approach musicians for those quotes on the front cover and the back cover?
That was me.
Mm-hmm.
And I approached people who I'd interviewed once, each person. A couple or twice, actually. And I just hoped that they would recall that. I felt like we had a good rapport. And I think I asked a couple more as well that didn't appear, who I didn't hear from. But otherwise, it was a great strike rate. And people actually read it and gave me feedback other than just the quotes.
They gave you notes. Okay.
Yeah, so it was Paul Kelly, Adelita, Abby May, Tim Rogers. Yeah. They didn't all give me notes, but some did.
That's awesome. It was an inspired idea, and I'm sure you've been asked by many interviewers. It's been mentioned in many profiles and articles about the book I saw when it came out last year. You know, any book that's got Paul Kelly quoted on the front and Tim Rogers on the back must be interesting or something like that. So it was a good marketing hook, I suppose.
Well, I think every book has quotes on it pretty much now, isn't it?
Yeah,
so,
by and large.
I mean, normally you'd say to your publisher, all right, who else do you publish that can give me a quote? But that wasn't going to work for this. I mean, well, I suppose it might have, but I wanted people who were interested in music to read it.
Yeah.
And I wanted musicians to endorse it because that would show that it was true to life. And Paul's quote was scathing, funny, true.
Yeah.
So it's true.
Very good. Yeah. What was the day when you opened your email to see that?
Yes.
Straight in the car.
Are you sure? I almost wrote back like before he'd had a chance to respond. No, he said he was going to read it and see what he thought. And I almost sent a follow-up a week later like, no, it's okay, look, don't worry, it's fine, don't worry.
Yeah.
So I should never have asked.
How was that experience, being published in a book for the first time?
That's great.
Wait, was it the first time? Was it your first novel?
My first time, yeah.
You've edited some compilations.
Anthology, yeah.
Yes.
It's funny, when I had the initial meeting with the publisher and it was basically her blowing smoke up my ass and saying, we want to publish this, I came out of it and I was really depressed. And I'd had that experience before with this anthology that I put out. Same publishing company, actually, Allen and Unwin. And my friend and I, she's the co-editor, both came out that meeting really flat. And I think it's almost like, okay, this dream you've had all your life is now almost within your grasp. Now what are you going to dream about?
Uh-huh.
It's almost like it's safer to have a fantasy. And when that's about to come true, you're kind of almost like bereft.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to sound really selfish and ungrateful, isn't it?
Yes. No, okay. I understand that. Well, it was published and it was well received and it sold okay.
Sold okay, yeah.
And the door was left wide open for a sequel, I believe, in the closing
I
chapters.
left the door open.
Yes.
The door wasn't necessarily open.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it was only a one-book contract, put it like that.
But do you have an interest in revisiting those characters?
No. But at the time when I was finishing it, I thought, oh yeah, I definitely want to write a second one. But I mean, it would have to sell exceptionally well to write a sequel.
Mm.
And it sold, respectively.
Yeah. Having had that first contract, did you find the second book contract easier to get?
I got it pretty much straight away, so yeah. I approached one publisher first. Well, I mean, to me it was between two. It was only ever going to be between two, and it just happened that I approached the first one first. And they wanted a memoir, basically, and they wanted my face on the cover, and I just, that wasn't the book that I was thinking of. So I went with the other one, and they immediately said yes too, which was a pretty great feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And Black Ink, who is the publisher, to me was really obvious because I loved the work they'd done with, say, Anna Crean, for example. So she did night games about the rapey footballers in AFL.
Yeah.
And she did Into the Woods about logging in Tasmania, and that was, the sort of thing I wanted to do. Immersive journalism where you're going with the author on the journey, and seeing things through their eyes, and maybe they're going to change their minds about things along the way. And I knew that Black Ink would handle it respectfully and put a lot of attention and time behind it, and that people expect a certain type of book from Black Ink and it would fit well. And plus, Maurice Schwartz, who owns Black Ink, also owns a Saturday paper who I write for. So it just seemed really obvious.
Yeah, that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Coming towards the end, you left time out for The Glow. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Tell us about The Glow.
Well, The Glow is a Mamma Mia site. And I left time out because they were restructuring in a way that did not benefit me or the Sydney editor, and we both wound up resigning. And that's as far as I'll go into that. And The Glow just came up within about a week of me putting my feelers out. So there was a bit of that kind of bloody-minded, well, let's see how fast I can get another job. But Alex Gorman was a former editor, and I thought she'd done a great job, and she's well respected. And there's only so much I can say about this. I stayed 3.5 weeks and decided it wasn't for me, and I'm not going to get into myriad reasons why it wasn't.
I'll ask though. Going from a monthly print publications to a daily online environment, did you find that jarring?
Yeah, and also it's all digital. So to let go of print is quite difficult. For me. And I was keeping a work diary for the first time because I was a little wary, and I was working 70 hours a week. And okay, I was only there for 3.5 weeks, and maybe that would have changed, but I didn't think that was acceptable. And now I'm just completely my own boss. I've gone from that to working from home, and I feel like I could never go back to a desk job now. It feels incredibly liberating. And I feel like it kind of took perhaps going to that company to make that decision final.
Cool. Well, you got something out of it.
Yes, I'm extremely grateful.
You also got a work diary which may reappear in some fictionalized form if your past is to be the predictor of future behaviours.
I don't know how much of an expert I'd be on 3.5 weeks. Do you have a vivid imagination?
I do. There's a great pink flamingo out the window I've been staring at this entire interview.
Yeah.
All right, so you're now a freelance journalist and editor and author, working on your second book. Tell me more about freelance life, and you haven't worked as a freelancer in a little while. How have you found the adjustment, but beyond loving it, as you just said?
Well, I would say I'm on half of what I was on before financially, possibly less. But I'm really picking and choosing. Like, I'm not doing fiddly little jobs for $150 here and there. I'm just doing the bigger jobs I can get my teeth stuck into. I much prefer doing things for the big newspapers. So print. And a few days a week I work with kangaroos. So I live in the country and I'm actually enjoying the country rather than spending my whole life in the train. And I tend to write in cake shops, so that's nice. Doesn't get much better, really.
You wrote about wildlife rescue for Saturday paper earlier this year. That's an interesting thing that not too many other Australian journalists are looking at.
I've got that corner.
Yeah, I mean, you probably weren't necessarily thinking of it as, I'm going to be the one who writes about this.
I wasn't, but since I wrote that, I've been thinking, well, there's plenty more I can write about this topic. Sure. Because it's a real shame. The government doesn't look after our wildlife at all. So all the shelters that take in all the animals that people hit with cars or get caught in fences, they get $2,000 a year from the government. And everything else is just whoever owns the shelter's got to earn it. And the same with rescuers. I do a bit of rescuing, and it's completely volunteer driven. There's no people employed by the government who rescue kangaroos, for instance, or wombats or wallabies or anything. None.
You're outraged.
I am. I've got so much outrage to share. It's good though. Like, I'm more outraged now as a writer than I used to be, and about more valid things. And I feel like I want to use writing now to have a social conscience and actually be useful. So I'm always going to do music interviews as well from time to time. But, if you can balance that out with something that might make a difference.
Very good. Thanks for talking to me, Jenny.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to Penmanship, and thank you to my guest, Jenny Valentish. You can find show notes for this episode and all previous episodes at penmanshippodcast.com. As I mentioned in the intro, this will be the final episode of Penmanship for 2015. I'm very much looking forward to continuing in 2016 with a new array of guests, and I'll most likely be far more mobile than I was this year. As you may have noticed, most of the guests, if not all of them actually, were recorded here in Brisbane, Queensland, where I was reporting my second book, which will be published in 2016. So, starting next year, I should be travelling to the likes of Sydney and Melbourne to interview a wider range of guests who live in those cities. I'd love to hear your feedback on this episode and the show in general. You can email me, andrew@penmanshippodcast.com. You can follow the show on Twitter, @penmanshipau. And if you'd like to support the show, you can do so by reviewing on iTunes. Preferably favourably, but it's up to you. I prefer you to be honest. Thanks for listening. Until next year.